In this video, we'll be taking apart the Doogee S89 Pro. If you want to see more videos like this, make sure you subscribe and follow me on Twitter so you'll be notified when I upload a new video. And if you want to purchase an S89 Pro or need any tools, there are links in the description. The S89 Pro is one heavy phone. If you ever owned one of those old Nextel brick phones, you know what I'm talking about. It weighs in slightly just under 1 pound, however it's a very solid and rugged device. You can practically run this over with an excavator and still have a functioning device. With that being said, let's take this apart and check out the inside. Aside from the fact the phone is already rugged as it is, there's an additional case housing the phone, giving it an extra layer of protection. As always, the first thing that needs to be done is to remove the SIM tray. Here's a better look at that. Next, we'll need to use a hairdryer or a heat gun to apply heat to the front of the phone where the screen is, to loosen up the adhesive underneath, and then you'll need a lot of isopropyl alcohol, a suction cup tool, and pry tools to pry the screen off. It's held down with a lot of strong adhesive, so it's going to take you quite some time. Once the screen is lifted over, there's a metal cover with a Phillips screw which is covering the connector that needs to be removed. Now the flex cable for the screen can be disconnected from the main board. Here's a better look at the screen assembly. There's some graphite film on the bottom to help transfer heat. The glass covering the screen is fairly thick, coming in at 1.3 millimeters. There are 7 Phillips screws and 6 T5 or Torx 5 screws which need to be removed. Now the aluminum midplate can be lifted up and removed. At this point, we can disconnect the battery cable. Once the battery cable has been disconnected, we can disconnect the rest of the cables. Here's a better look at the 16 megapixel front-facing camera. In order to remove the battery, there are 6 Phillips screws which are holding it down that need to be removed. Now the battery can be lifted up and removed. Once that metal cover is removed, we have a better look at the massive 12,000 mAh battery. Taking a closer look, we can see that there are 2 batteries which are joined together as one. The black coaxial cable which is connected to the subboard needs to be popped off and removed. At this point, the mainboard assembly can be lifted up and removed from the housing. Here's a better look at this assembly. To remove the main board from this assembly, first this flex cable which is connecting the main board to this backboard needs to be disconnected. And then there are 7 Phillips screws which need to be removed. The proximity sensor is located on top. Next to that is the headphone jack. To the right of that is the notification LED. And there's a liquid damage indicator sticker, which is that white sticker. The SIM and memory card reader is also located on this side. And there's copper tape on these shields to help transfer heat. Once the copper tape is peeled back, we can see a lot of thermal paste on the RAM and processor and the chip over here. Here's a better look with the thermal paste removed. Taking a look at the other side, there's a 64 megapixel primary camera, an 8 megapixel wide angle and macro lens, as well as a 20 megapixel night vision lens. None of these have OIS or optical image stabilization. The cables for the cameras can be disconnected from the main board, and the plastic assembly can be removed. Here's a better look at that. There's more copper tape on the shields on this side of the board. Once that copper tape is peeled back, we can see more thermal paste on these chips. There are some antenna lines drawn on this plastic housing which has light gray color lines. On this board, there's a dual LED flash. the RGB LED lights for the back, as well as the night vision IR or infrared lights. The vibrator motor is also soldered onto this board. This board does have a secondary microphone, and the hole for that is right here. Once we flip it around, we can see it on the other side. There are 4 more Phillips screws on the bottom that need to be removed. Now the black lock on this connector needs to be lifted up, and then the subboard can be lifted up and removed. The charger port is located on the center bottom of the subboard. Here's a look at the other side. Now there are 2 more Phillips screws which need to be removed. The speaker assembly can now be lifted up and removed. Here's a better look at that. There's a rubber gasket and mesh filter over the speaker opening, and there's some more antenna lines drawn on this plastic cover. So back to the housing, the wireless charging coil and the NFC antenna are located in the center, and the flex cable connectors for them are here. This is the flex cable for the programmable key on this side. The fingerprint scanner cable is located here, and the flex cable for the volume keys and power button is located here. If you need to replace either of those, after taking the phone apart, you would also have to remove the 3 T5 screws or Torx 5 screws on either side of the phone to remove that plate and be able to remove the button. The earpiece speaker is located on top and is glued in place with a rubber gasket. The primary microphone is located on the bottom corner of the phone, and that's also glued in place with a rubber gasket. And finally, for the camera lens cover on the back, it's held in place with adhesive, so if you want to replace that, you have to heat it up and pry it off. For the repairability score on this phone, I give it a 3 out of 10. Now it's time to put this phone back together. Once everything's back in place, power on the phone, and you're done. The S89 Pro might not be the most repairable phone, however it's an extremely solid and durable device, so you're probably not even going to be needing any repairs. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one.